They say betrayal doesn't come from your enemies. That's the part that stings the most. It always comes from the ones who say, "I love you," then turn around and twist the knife. I was folding his shirts when I found her earring. Not hidden. Not tucked away. Just there. Casual. Shameless. Like it belonged there. Gold. Hooped. Keep. Not mine. I stared at it in my palm for a long time, trying to let the absurdity of it register. There were only two possibilities. One, I was going insane, or two, Liam had brought her here, into our home, our bedroom, and didn't even have the decency to clean up the evidence. The sound of the washing machine droning in the background became distant. My chest was tight, a buzzing under my skin like I'd just touched something electric. I held the earring like a trigger. And in a way it was. That was the first clue that something in me had shifted. Liam came home late that night as usual, with a smile on his face and the scent of another woman clinging to his shirt in subtle hints of vanilla and citrus. He kissed my cheek like he hadn't just lit a match in our life and dropped it into a pool of gasoline. I kissed him back. Played the part. The part I'd perfected over years of loving a man who never really loved me back in the way I needed. Maybe he thought I was fragile. Maybe he thought I wouldn't know, wouldn't suspect. But I had known long before the earring. It had started with whispers. Late texts he angled away from my sight. Work dinners he never used to have. He once came home with a scratch on his neck and tried to pass it off as a run-in with a branch. I didn't press. I just watched. Waited. And now I was done waiting. I started with small things. Moved his keys an inch to the left. Deleted one number from his contact list. Took one shoe and hid it in the garage. He'd be late to work, frustrated, confused. I'd watch him scramble while sipping my coffee like nothing was wrong. Power, I realized, was not in confrontation. It was in control. Quiet, invisible control. It wasn't about the earring. Not anymore. It was about the years I spent building him up, holding him together while he unraveled behind closed doors. The job he landed because I stayed up all night rewriting his resume. The apartment in my name because his credit was shit. The lie I told his mother when she asked why he didn't come to Christmas. I had protected him, buffered him from the consequences of his own incompetence. Now I was going to strip it all away. I hired a private investigator. A woman named Arya, discreet and brilliant. She handed me photos 2 weeks later. Her. At a restaurant I recognized. The one we celebrated our second anniversary at. He'd taken her to my place. She had long black hair, a thin frame, and eyes that didn't look like she knew pain the way I did. Her smile was fake, full of self-satisfaction and youth. She looked like the kind of girl who thought she'd won something. I almost pitied her. Until I saw the next photo. It was them, pressed together in the front seat of his car. Her legs over his lap, his hands on her thighs. That same smile. His, not hers. The one he used to give me when he thought I was the only woman in the world. It made something in me snap, not all at once, but like a zipper catching the skin underneath as it's pulled up too fast. That quiet, skin-deep hurt. Personal. Thanked Arya. Paid her in cash. Then I sat down with a glass of wine and made a list. 10 things he had because of me. 10 things I would take back. The next week I began with his job. He worked at a boutique marketing firm. Small, competitive, and ruthless. The kind of place where one whisper of misconduct could turn you into a pariah. He had once used my ideas in a pitch and won the client. I had the emails. I forwarded them to HR anonymously with a short message. Thought you should know whose work he's been taking credit for. 3 days later he was under investigation. He came home angry, distracted. Someone's trying to sabotage me, he muttered. Jealous assholes in the office. I nodded sympathetically. You should talk to HR about it. He looked at me like I was a saint. Kissed my forehead. I smiled again. He didn't notice how my eyes didn't. That same night I created a fake profile on social media. Used a name similar to hers. Followed all his friends. Then posted a picture of them together. One of the ones from Arya's file. Caption, "You're not the only one he lies to." Then I waited. It spread like wildfire. His mother called. Twice. I answered the second time. Do you know what's going on with Liam? He's all over the internet. I don't know anything, but he's been distant lately, I said, letting my voice tremble a little. I thought maybe he was just stressed. She was silent for a long time. I'm sorry, sweetheart, she said. You deserve better. I almost laughed. I know. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. The leak at work. The ruined reputation. The calls from friends who suddenly weren't so friendly. He started staying up late trying to fix things, whispering into the phone in panicked tones. I watched him unravel while I made dinner, humming to myself. The girl, her name was Lila, apparently blocked him after the post. I made sure of that too. I'd reached out to her using a burner number, pretended to be his girlfriend. Told her everything. Every dirty secret. Every lie. She sent one word back. Disgusting. I knew that would break him more than anything I could say. One night he asked, "Do you think people can really change?" I looked up from my book. "I think people reveal who they are. Eventually." He stared at me for a long time. Searching. I wondered if he saw the shift in my eyes, the coldness that had replaced the woman who used to love him. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. Either way, he didn't say another word. 2 weeks later, he lost his job. Laid off, pending investigation. Translation: no one wants to touch a liability. He came home drunk, stumbling through the door, slurring apologies for things he hadn't confessed to. "I just made a mistake, okay?" he said, tears welling in his eyes. I helped him into bed. Took off his shoes. Pulled the blanket up over his shoulders. He passed out. Then I stood over him for a long time, watching his chest rise and fall. This was just the beginning. There were still 9 things left on my list. I watched him crumble in real time. The job, the woman, the reputation. All gone. And still it wasn't enough. You don't spend years tethered to a man who makes you smaller by inches without knowing exactly where the weak points are. So I pressed harder. You see, Liam didn't just hurt me. He rewrote me. Gaslit me so thoroughly I once apologized for reacting to his lies. He hollowed me out. Now I was learning how to fill the empty space with fire. The next item on my list, his friendships. Liam was a social man. The charming type. He had friends in every corner of the city. Old college buddies, work connections, neighborhood poker nights. But most of them were shallow. His relationships were transactional. Ego-fed and convenience-based. So I gave them a reason to rethink their investment. I started with Jordan, the best friend, the best man at our almost wedding. The one who told me during a drunken New Year's party that if Liam ever screwed up, I should call him instead. I never forgot that. I texted him from my real number. "Thought you should see this. You deserve to know the kind of man you've been defending." Attached was a video I'd secretly recorded from Liam's phone. A voice note he never deleted. In it, Liam bragged to someone about playing both sides, meaning me and Lila, and called Jordan a lazy leech who owes me everything anyway. It took less than 10 minutes for Jordan to respond. Wow. Didn't realize how deep the snake ran. One down. Liam came home that night and said, "Jordan blocked me. No warning." I tilted my head. "That's weird. Thought you two were tight." He was quiet for a moment. "People are acting different lately. Like I did something wrong." I just gave a small shrug and went back to my laptop. "Maybe you did." He stared at me, then eyes searching again. He'd started doing that more, like he was trying to recognize me in my own face. Too late. I'd buried that version of me. This one had sharper teeth. The next target was his car. It wasn't just a car. It was his pride. His first big purchase, leased under my name because his credit wasn't enough. A sleek silver BMW he washed every Sunday morning like it was sacred. So I took it back. I called the finance company, reminded them that the primary name on the lease was mine. They were all too happy to assist when I mentioned he was behind on a couple payments. I'd made sure of that, transferring the autopay to a closed account. Within a week, the car was gone. Repossessed in the middle of the night. He woke me up pacing. "Someone stole my car," he barked, breath reeking of beer and panic. "No," I said calmly, not even bothering to sit up. "It was repossessed. You haven't paid it in over 60 days. His face twisted. "You're lying." I opened the drawer and pulled out the letter. I'd printed it out just for this moment. "I'm not," I said, handing it to him. "You should have read the fine print. It was never yours." He stood there, stunned, gripping the paper like he wanted to crush it. Or me. I didn't flinch. I think that scared him more than anything else. He started unraveling faster after that. Started missing appointments. Drinking earlier in the day. He borrowed my car once. Then returned it dented. Said nothing. Just tossed the keys on the counter and went to bed. So I took the spare and had it towed. The next morning I acted surprised when he asked where it was. Gone. I said, faking concern. You should file a report. He didn't speak to me for 2 days after that. Silence never felt so good. I moved through my list like a conductor guiding an orchestra. His finances? We had a shared account. He insisted on it back when I was too in love to see the danger. I started draining it. Slowly. Not all at once. Enough to raise questions, not alarms. His wardrobe? I donated his favorite jacket. Threw out his lucky watch. Burned one of his shirts in the sink just to see how it felt. Liberating if you're wondering. His privacy? Gone. I already knew every password. I logged into his emails, flagged the job applications he'd been desperately sending. Deleted follow-ups before he saw them. Sometimes I'd respond as him. Politely declining interviews. I wanted him stuck. Trapped. Exactly the way he left me when I begged for answers and got silence instead. One night I found him sitting on the edge of the bed in the dark. You ever feel like your life's falling apart all at once? He asked. I walked in slowly, sat beside him. Yeah, I said. I know exactly what that feels like. He turned his head slightly toward me. I'm sorry, you know. I stayed quiet. I didn't mean to hurt you. I let the silence breathe between us, thick and pregnant with unspoken truths. Then I leaned in and whispered, you didn't hurt me. You taught me. He didn't understand the weight of that sentence. Not yet. I think it was the following week that Lila messaged me. She didn't know it was me she was messaging, of course. She thought I was someone else. A mutual connection I'd fabricated with photos scraped from online. Her message was simple. He keeps calling. I think he's losing it. I replied. He's finally reaping what he sowed. No reply after that. I felt nothing. Not guilt. Not triumph. Just clarity. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was surgery. I was cutting out the rot. He stopped going out. Friends ghosted him. His savings were gone. The car gone. The job gone. The side piece gone. He was a man without an identity. And still I wasn't done. Because the one thing Liam valued more than his ego was his image. His carefully constructed persona. Polished. Untouchable. A man who always landed on his feet. So I planned the next step carefully, the public collapse. But that's for later. First, I needed him to admit something. To crack. So I left a note on his pillow one night. Typed. Anonymous. Just 4 words. I know everything, liar. He didn't say a word, but I heard him pacing at 3 a.m. Talking to himself. Opening drawers. Checking under the bed. Then the fridge. Like the truth might be hiding in the butter compartment. That was the first night he slept on the couch. I didn't mind. The bed was softer without him. He stopped shaving. Stopped dressing up. His movements changed, shoulders hunched, eyes paranoid. He checked the locks 3 times a night. Started calling his mother daily, like she could save him from drowning. She couldn't. I made sure of that too. I'd called her the week before, told her I needed space from Liam. Told her he'd said cruel things and I wasn't sure I felt safe. Let her imagination do the rest. He pulled away fast after that. Funny how quick the world closes its doors when your halo falls off. One evening I caught him crying in the kitchen. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quietly breaking. His head was in his hands. Shoulders shaking. He didn't notice me at first. I just stood in the hallway watching him from the shadows. There was a time I would have rushed to him. Would have held him and told him it would be okay even if I didn't believe it. But no. I turned and walked away. Let him sit in the storm he built. Let the silence answer the cries I once drowned in. I crossed 5 more things off the list that night. That left one final thing. His dignity. That would require a different kind of fire. Not the silent, surgical kind. But public. Irreversible. The kind you watch burn from a distance while you sip your wine and feel nothing but peace. I wasn't ready yet. But I would be. Very soon. I had Liam on the ropes. Jobless. Friendless. Broke. Hollowed out and stumbling through his days like a man walking through fog with no map. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because he still had one thing left. The illusion of dignity. And I was going to rip it from him, piece by piece. I started with his phone. He never changed his passwords. Too arrogant. Too careless. I logged into his cloud account and scrolled through the years of messages, pictures and call logs. I cataloged everything. Every conversation with Lila, every video he'd ever sent her. The dirty talk. The selfies. The God, she's so clingy he sent about me 3 months before our anniversary. I organized it all in a neat little PDF. Titled it Confessions of a Coward. Then I created a private link. No names in the file. No outright threats. Just enough context that anyone who knew him would know it was him. Then I sent it, anonymously, to his entire contact list. Family. Former coworkers. His college alumni group. Even a couple mutual friends he once told me could never turn on him. I scheduled it for Friday morning 7 a.m. while he was still asleep beside me. And when his phone started vibrating non-stop, a frantic buzzing orchestra of consequence, I pretended to still be asleep. He jolted out of bed. Sat upright like someone had dumped ice water on his chest. What the hell? He stood up, pacing with his phone in hand, then went silent. His face drained of color. I could hear him whispering, "No, no, no, no," over and over again like it was a prayer. That was the moment I opened my eyes and said, "Everything okay?" He looked at me like a man who just realized he'd been living with the enemy. And I smiled. He didn't speak to me for 3 days after that. Fine by me. He barely left the house, too afraid to see who might recognize him. Too ashamed to answer calls. His mother blocked him. His college mentor, the man who once promised him a path back into the firm if things ever went sideways, sent one line. "You need help. Don't contact me again." He broke a glass that night. Smashed it against the kitchen wall, then collapsed in the corner, hands bleeding, sobbing like a child. I handed him a towel without a word. Later I found the blood droplets and cleaned them up calmly. Lovingly. The only thing left to destroy now was his version of the truth. You see, Liam still believed he was a good man who made a mistake. Not a manipulator. Not a user. Not the kind of man who walks through life collecting people like spare batteries, draining them until they're dry, then tossing them in the trash. He still thought he could redeem himself. So I made sure to extinguish that idea too. I started planting doubt in him. Little things here and there. A burner number texting him cryptic messages like, "She knows." Slipping notes under the door, "Liar." Changing his alarm tone to the voice memo of him telling Lila, "She's so dumb it's almost cute." He was unraveling. Once I caught him whispering in the mirror, "You're not crazy. You're not crazy." I wanted to say, "But you are. You're becoming what you made me into." But I didn't. I let the silence chew at him instead. I had one final play. The thing that would make sure he never climbed out of the hole again. And it was going to happen at his lowest. I knew he'd crack eventually. That he'd snap and say something unforgivable. Something he couldn't take back. I just had to wait for the moment. Came one Thursday night. We were in the living room. I'd made dinner. His favorite. He barely touched it. Just sat there staring at his hands like they didn't belong to him anymore. Then he said out of nowhere, "Did you do this to me?" I looked up slowly. "Do what?" "All of it. The job. Her. My friends. Lila. Everything's been falling apart and you're just calm. Like you wanted this." I set my fork down gently. "That's a big accusation, Liam." His jaw clenched. "You're AF ***** psycho." There was the moment. I stood up and walked toward him. Calm. Measured. Then leaned down so we were face to face. "You want to know the truth?" I whispered. "I didn't destroy you. You did." Then I walked away. He threw the plate. It shattered against the wall behind me. Pasta and porcelain everywhere. I didn't flinch. Just walked into our room and locked the door. The next morning I was gone. Not just physically. Emotionally. Mentally. Legally. I had transferred the lease on the apartment back into his name the week before. Packed my bags. Cleared my accounts. Canceled the utilities. Shut down the joint credit card. I left the key on the table with a note. "You'll spend the rest of your life wondering which part of your collapse was me and which was just karma. Good luck figuring that out." Then I walked out. And never looked back. You'd think that would be the end, wouldn't you? But it wasn't. Because some men don't know how to let go of control. Even when they're the ones who lost it. Liam tried to call. Dozens of times. He emailed. But then he threatened. He said he'd go to the police, say I'd stalked him. Sabotaged him. But there's a funny thing about fire. Once you're the one holding the match, people forget they gave you the gasoline. He had no proof. No credibility. No audience left. Me. I started over. New city. New job. New name on my mailbox. And peace. Not the kind you get from forgiveness. That's for saints. But the kind you earn when you reclaim your power. One quiet, ruthless step at a time. People ask me now why I don't date. Why I smile but never get too close. Why I seem calm in a way that feels calculated. I just say, I learned what I'm capable of. And that's enough to keep most people at a safe distance. After Liam, I left the city. Took only what mattered. My clothes, my passport, a laptop, and my grandmother's ring. Everything else could rot in that apartment along with the man who made it unlivable. I moved 3 hours away to a town no one had ever heard of. A place with quiet streets, bookstores that smelled like old wood, and strangers who didn't know how to ask too many questions. It was perfect. The first night in my new apartment, a one-bedroom on the second floor of a creaky building above a laundromat, I stood in the middle of the empty room and just breathed. No one yelling. No fake apologies. No invisible tension threading the air like piano wire. Just silence. And for the first time in a long time I felt something like peace. But peace is uncomfortable when you've lived in chaos for too long. Feels like waiting for the punch that never comes. I slept with a knife under my pillow for 3 weeks. I got a job at a small marketing firm downtown. They liked my resume. Said I was exactly what they needed. I smiled and nodded and gave them a version of me they could swallow easily. Clean, friendly, competent. No one needed to know what I had done. What I had survived. What I had become. I showed up early, stayed late. Took on extra projects. People started to trust me. That was dangerous, I knew. But I was good at pretending. Years with Liam had made me an expert at shape-shifting. I wasn't there to make friends. I was there to rebuild an empire. One brick at a time. For months, Liam didn't exist in my world. I blocked his number. Changed mine. Deleted every old account and never looked back. I even changed how I dressed. Simpler, sharper. Gone were the soft sweaters he liked. The makeup he used to say made me look too aggressive. Now I wore black. Structured jackets. Clean lines. Red lipstick like a blade. I wasn't hers anymore. The woman who folded his shirts and smiled through tears. I was someone else now. Someone dangerous. Someone free. But freedom is never total. I saw his name again 5 months later. Not in a text. Not in a call. In an article. Local man found hospitalized after attempted overdose. There was no photo. No details. Just a name. His name. I read it twice. Then I closed the tab and went back to work. I didn't tell anyone. He had always been dramatic. Always looking for a stage. If this was just another act, fine. If it was real, also fine. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. But still, that night I drank alone. Not out of guilt. Out of memory. Because even monsters leave shadows behind. A week later I got a letter. No return address. Just my name written in handwriting I knew like my own. Inside was a single sentence. You ruined me. I laughed. Not because it wasn't true. Because he finally realized it. The arrogance was gone. The excuses. The manipulation. All stripped down to one raw, honest sentence. And I folded that note, tucked it into a box and locked it away. Not because I needed to remember. But because I wanted proof. Proof that monsters bleed too. In the months that followed, I thrived. My firm offered me a lead role on a new campaign. I got promoted. People started asking me to mentor them. Me, the woman who once begged a man not to cheat. I said yes to the first guy who asked me out just to see if I could. It was coffee. Harmless. He was kind. Nervous. Told dumb jokes that made me smile even when I didn't want to. But when he reached for my hand across the table, I flinched. He noticed. Said, "You okay?" I nodded. Light. And went home alone. Healing is not a straight line. Some nights I'd sleep through till morning, dreams quiet. Other nights I'd wake up gasping, heart racing, some phantom version of Liam clawing at the edge of my subconscious. Once I dreamed he was standing in my kitchen holding that earring I found, that stupid gold hoop, and asking me, why wasn't I enough? And in the dream I didn't speak. I just turned and walked away. Same as I did in real life. I started writing again. Not publicly. Not professionally. Just for me. Stories about women who burned down the lives of men who underestimated them. Stories where justice wasn't clean, but it was satisfying. Stories where pain turned to power and silence turned to war cries. One night I printed one out and read it aloud to myself. When I finished, I realized I'd written something close to a confession. But no one would ever read it. Because people love stories about revenge as long as they're fictional. The moment you admit you did it in real life, they don't call you powerful. They call you crazy. One morning I found a voicemail on my work line. Blocked number. Male voice. Slurred. Hey, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I wanted to say I get it now. I get why you did what you did. Pause. I miss you. I miss who we were. No name. Didn't need one. I didn't save the message. Didn't even listen to it twice. Some part of me, the soft part, the old part, almost wanted to respond. But that part was dead. And I wasn't about to resurrect her just because he finally figured out what it meant to lose me. I saw him once by accident. 8 months after I left. I was visiting a friend in the city. Someone from college who never knew Liam, never knew what happened. We were walking near the art district when I saw a man sitting outside a soup kitchen. Thin. Slouched. Eyes sunken. It was him. I froze. He didn't see me. He was staring at the sidewalk, clutching a paper cup like it was the last thing he owned. I turned and walked the other way. Didn't say a word to my friend. Didn't look back. And if he saw me? Let that be the last nail in the coffin. Let him know just how invisible he'd become. People like to believe in redemption. That everyone can change. Be better. Start over. But I don't. I believe in consequences. I believe in the damage we do and the weight we carry for it. I believe in scars, not second chances. Liam got exactly what he gave me. Isolation, loss, and silence. Only difference was, I walked away from it stronger. He didn't. Well, now I live quietly. No grand gestures. No melodrama. Just morning coffee, quiet music, and a version of myself that no longer bends for anyone. People think I'm kind. They don't know I'm dangerous. They smile and ask about my weekend. I smile back and say, restful. And it is. Because I rest easy now. Knowing I'm not the woman who got destroyed. I'm the one who lit the match. There's a moment in healing when the dust finally settles and you catch your own reflection. Not in a mirror but in someone else's eyes. A coworker. A stranger. A man across the bar. And suddenly you wonder, is this who I am now? Or worse, is this who I've always been? For months I lived in the quiet. I wore peace like a second skin, tailored to fit over the scarred remains of the woman I used to be. No contact from Liam. No calls. No messages. No whispers from old friends or curious acquaintances. He was gone. The ghost of him dissolved into nothing. But healing doesn't come clean. It arrives in layers. Triggers. Echoes. And mine came in the form of a man named Eric. He was kind. That was the problem. He held doors. Remembered how I took my coffee. Noticed when I changed my earrings or stayed late at work. He asked questions like they were offerings, and when I answered he actually listened. Not just nodded, listened. It was unbearable. I tried to push him away with silence. With walls. With indifference. But he kept coming back, not with pressure but presence. You don't have to be afraid of me, he said once. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of me. Afraid of what I'd become. Of what I might do to someone who didn't deserve it. Because when you've destroyed a man once, it's hard not to feel like a loaded weapon. Safety off, finger hovering just above the trigger. The first time I let Eric touch me I flinched. Not because it hurt. But because it didn't. He kissed me like I was a person. Not a prize, not a challenge, not a placeholder. And afterward he didn't disappear into his phone or roll over in silence. He looked at me and said, "Tell me something real." And for a second I almost did. I almost told him about Liam. About the earring. The slow unravel. The fire. About how revenge tasted like wine and gunpowder and freedom. But I didn't. Instead I said, I used to be someone else. He smiled. We all did. That night I stared at myself in the mirror for hours. Same face. Same eyes. Same bones. But it felt like looking at a stranger. I thought of all the lies I'd told. The mask I wore so well that even I forgot what my real face looked like underneath it. And for the first time in a long time I didn't feel powerful. I felt hollow. Not because I regretted what I'd done. but because I wasn't sure there was anything left beyond it. I wasn't the victim anymore. Wasn't the destroyer. I was something in between. A shape that kept shifting depending on who was looking. Weeks passed. Eric stayed. Patient. He never pried. Never pushed. But I could feel the questions behind his smile. The ones he didn't ask because he knew I wasn't ready to answer. It made me want to run. But something held me in place. A question I hadn't asked myself in a long time. What if I'm allowed to be happy again? Then Liam came back. Not physically. Not in some dramatic twist where he showed up at my door, ragged and repentant. Well, it was worse than that. He came back as a headline. Man accused of harassment, alleged retaliation against former partner. The article was short, vague, but it was him. And the former partner wasn't me. It was Lila. The same girl he'd cheated with. The same one he discarded when I took the stage and flipped the script. Apparently he found her again. And this time she fought back. There was a restraining order. Allegations of stalking. Emotional abuse. Digital harassment. And suddenly the man I had destroyed was being destroyed again. But not by me. By his own hands. Or maybe finally by karma. I didn't know how to feel. Relief? Validation? Nothing? Instead I felt something I hadn't expected. Fear. Because I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit until now. What if I didn't finish the job? That night I dreamt of him again. But this time he wasn't chasing me. He was following Eric. Watching from the shadows. Smiling with that same smirk he used to wear when he knew he'd gotten away with something. And when I woke up, my hands were clenched into fists. I hadn't clenched them like that since the first time I found her earring. The next day I called Arya. The PI. I hadn't spoken to her since the last photo drop. She picked up on the third ring. Didn't think I'd hear from you again, she said. You okay? I don't know, I replied. I told her about the article. About Lila. About the feeling I couldn't shake. Like Liam was still out there circling like a vulture. Want me to dig? She asked. Yes. Discreetly. Always. She hung up with a simple, I'll be in touch. And just like that, the past was breathing again. Eric knew something was wrong. I wasn't sleeping. Wasn't smiling. I checked my phone too often and jumped every time the doorbell rang. He didn't ask what was going on. He just made tea. Sat beside me. Held my hand. And that almost broke me. Because how do you explain to someone good that the ghosts you buried are clawing their way back up? Not to haunt you but to finish what they started. You don't. You just wait. And hope the damage doesn't reach them. Arya called 4 days later. He's spiraling, she said. Unemployed. Blacklisted from the industry. Burned bridges with almost everyone. But he's still looking for ways in. Through people. Women. My stomach turned. He tried reaching out to Lila again. She moved states. He found her number anyway. She shut him down hard. Is he dangerous? Pause. He's desperate. That was worse. Dangerous is predictable. You can see it coming. Desperate is chaotic. It explodes without warning. I thanked her. Hung up. And sat in silence for a long, long time. I had choices. Let it lie. Pretend I never saw the headline. Hope Lila's new city kept her safe. Hope Liam's spiral eventually ran out of momentum. Or finish the job. The idea came slowly. Like smoke creeping under a door. I didn't even notice it at first. Just small thoughts. Fragments. What if I leaked the rest? What if I sent his file to employers he hadn't reached yet? What if I made sure every woman in his path saw him before he got close? It wouldn't be hard. I still had everything. Screenshots. Voice notes. Photos. Evidence. The tools of the architect I used to be. All I had to do was build again. But something stopped me. Not fear. Not guilt. Eric. He looked at me one morning over breakfast after I'd been quiet for too long and said, whatever's haunting you, you don't have to face it alone. And that's when I knew. If I picked up the match again, I'd lose him. Not because he'd leave. But because I'd become the version of myself that couldn't let him in. And I didn't want to live behind that mask anymore. So I did something radical. I wrote to Lila. A real letter. No aliases. No games. I told her who I was. Told her what I'd done. Told her I believed her. And that if she ever needed help burying him for good, I had a shovel and a map. She never wrote back. But a month later, Liam disappeared from the news. No charges. No stories. Just silence. I don't know if that means she made peace or if she burned him quietly. Either way, I was done. I deleted the files. All of them. For real this time. Not as a power play. But as closure. Because if I kept them even hidden, even forgotten, that meant I still needed them. And I didn't. Not anymore. People think healing is about forgetting. It's not. It's about remembering without needing to reopen the wound. I still remember. Every detail. But now when I do, I don't feel rage. I feel distance. Like I'm watching someone else's story. Like the girl who folded his shirts and cried in the bathroom was someone I used to know. Someone I mourned. And then let go. Eric still doesn't know everything. But he knows enough. One night, after a long day and too many glasses of wine, I looked at him and said, "I've done things I'm not proud of." He didn't ask what. Just said, "So have I." And held me. And that was enough. Because sometimes, the best kind of forgiveness isn't from the people you hurt or the ones who hurt you. It's the kind you give yourself when you finally realize you survived. And that's more than enough. Eric and I were still together. Sort of. It wasn't fragile, but it wasn't safe either. It was careful. Intentional. Like we were both aware we were walking near a fault line, trying not to trigger the quake that might still be sleeping under the surface. He never pushed me to talk, but I could feel the questions hiding in the pauses of our conversations. Every time I flinched at sudden noise. Every time I stared too long at the scar on my arm from the night Liam punched the wall beside my head and glass rained down on us both. Eric saw it. All of it. And he stayed. That made me feel seen. And also exposed. Because Liam had seen me too, just long enough to know how to break me. I didn't know yet if Eric was strong enough to hold me, or if I was strong enough to let him. One afternoon I came home to find a package on the doorstep. No return label. My first instinct was fear. Then I remembered I wasn't her anymore. The woman who lived in fear. Who checked every window twice and kept pepper spray in her robe pocket. Still I opened it cautiously. Inside was a book. No note. No message. Just a worn paperback. Women Who Run with the Wolves. I sat with it in my hands for a long time. I hadn't touched a book like that in years. Not since I started reading things like How to Rebuild Your Career in 90 Days or The Art of Strategic Thinking. This was different. Intimate. Big. I flipped through it and a folded page caught my eye. The quote was underlined. "If you have yet to be called an incorrigible, defiant woman, don't worry, there is still time." I smiled for the first time in days. Because even if I didn't know who sent it, they understood. I started therapy again. This time not to talk about Liam. Not to dig into the trauma. I'd already done that. I'd already clawed through the rubble and found the bones. This time was different. This time was about what came after. "I don't know who I am without the war," I told the therapist on our second session. She nodded. "That's common. I miss the fight. That's normal too. When you've lived in survival mode, peace feels like withdrawal." That hit harder than I expected. Because I was addicted, not to pain, not to violence, but to control. To knowing I had the upper hand. That no one could ever put me back in the box I'd crawled out of. The therapist asked me, what would it look like to feel powerful and soft at the same time? I didn't know how to answer. Because softness still felt like weakness. Even now. At work things were stable. Too stable. I found myself sabotaging little things. Showing up 5 minutes late. Ignoring an email just to watch the tension build. It wasn't about incompetence. It was about friction. I craved it. Conflict had been my oxygen for so long, I didn't know how to breathe without it. Then I caught myself snapping at a junior associate. She hadn't done anything wrong, just asked the same question twice. I saw the way her face fell, how she recoiled like I might lash out again. It reminded me of myself. The old me. The one who apologized for everything even when she was the one bleeding. That night I wrote the associate an email. Not a corporate apology. A real one. "I'm sorry. I was harsh. You didn't deserve that. I'm still learning how to lead without hurting people. Thank you for your patience." She replied. "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know." And for the first time I felt a flicker of something new. Not control. Not dominance. Something else. Grace. One evening Eric cooked dinner. Pasta. Wine. Candles. It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't an anniversary. It It was just life. We sat on the floor afterward, drinking red wine from mismatched mugs. He looked at me like he always did, steady, curious kind. I love you, he said. My heart stuttered. Not because I didn't feel it, but because I did. And love had always come with a cost. I didn't say it back. Not that night. But I reached for his hand and held it like it was the last rope between me and a part of myself I hadn't trusted in years. He squeezed back. And that was enough. Later, I found myself standing in front of the mirror again. But this time I saw someone different. Not a ghost. Not a weapon. Not a victim. Just me. Strong. Unapologetic. Still healing, yes. But whole, in the way broken things can be whole again when you stop pretending they were ever perfect. I smiled. And for once it didn't feel like armor. Liam tried to contact me again. A letter this time. Sloppy handwriting. Smudged ink. No return address. He said he was getting help. That he'd learned a lot. That he wanted closure. I read it once. Then set it on fire in the sink. Because closure doesn't come from the people who shattered you. It comes from standing in your own ashes and deciding you're still worth saving. A month later I told Eric I loved him. No big moment. No romantic crescendo. Just morning light, his sleepy smile, and the quiet certainty that I could say it and mean it and not disappear into my own fear. I love you, I said. He didn't ask if I was sure. He just kissed me. Like he already knew. People like to believe healing is a finish line. It's not. It's a loop. You circle back to the same scars. You touch them, trace them, remember the pain. But each time the memory softens. The echo fades. You start again. And this time, maybe you don't flinch when someone reaches for you. This time maybe you let them in. This time maybe you forgive yourself for becoming the woman who lit the fire. And the one who learned to walk away from the smoke. I went back. One last time. Not to the apartment. That place belonged to a ghost. A younger, smaller version of me. The girl who once stood in the kitchen holding an earring like it was a loaded gun and still thought, maybe he just made a mistake. I didn't want to see her again. I went back to the city. To walk the streets without him in them. To prove I could. To remind myself that the world didn't belong to the man who tried to break me. It never had. I just let him believe it did. The city hadn't changed much. People still moved fast, eyes down, shoulders tense. I blended in. Just another woman in a coat and boots, coffee in hand, air in her lungs. But everything felt different. Because I was different. Because I wasn't walking into a past. I was walking out of one. I passed the restaurant, the one where he took her Lila on our anniversary. It was closed. Condemned. A faded sign on the door read renovations coming soon, but from the look of it no one had been inside in months. I stared at the door for a long time. Not in grief. Not in anger. Just acknowledgement. That part of the story was over. That chapter yellowed and done. So I kept walking. And didn't look back. People ask me now, how did you move on? I don't give them the real answer. Because the truth is, I didn't. I evolved. I burned the bridge and built a new one with my bare hands. I didn't move on. I rose up. Eric proposed. Not on one knee. Not with a grand gesture. He slid the ring across the kitchen table while I was eating cereal and said, "This doesn't have to be now. Or ever. But I love you and I want to build something real with you." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't love him. But because I was waiting for the fear. The panic. The inner voice telling me that love leads to leverage and leverage leads to power and power leads to pain. But the voice didn't come. It had gone quiet months ago. I reached across the table. Took his hand. "I'm not the woman I was," I said. "I know," he said. "That's why I'm asking." I didn't give him an answer right then. Not because I wasn't sure. But because I wanted to say yes on my own terms. Not in reaction to my past, but in recognition of my future. 3 weeks later I said yes. And it felt like healing. Not the soft kind. The sharp, sobering kind. The kind that reminds you wounds can close without forgetting the blade that made them. Before we got married I wrote Liam one last letter. I didn't send it. I buried it. In a field near the place I'd grown up. Where the grass was tall and the wind didn't ask questions. It said, "You don't know this version of me. And you never will. That's the real loss, Liam. Not the job or the car or the women who finally saw through you. It's me. The woman you mistook for weak. The one you tried to mold. You lost her. And she's never coming back. I signed it with my full name, the one I was reclaiming. And I folded it once, then buried it beneath a tree with roots deeper than memory. Not for him. For me. So that part of me could rest. Our wedding was small. 10 people. No white dress. No aisle. No bullshit. Just vows whispered on a cold beach at sunset. Eric's hand in mine. The tide pulling in and out like breath. I didn't promise forever. I promised honesty. Growth. To never make him pay for someone else's sins. And he promised to meet me where I stood, not where he wished I could be. It was enough. More than enough. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about the woman I used to be. The one who stayed too long. Who begged. Who bent. Who bled in silence. But I don't pity her. Thank her. Because she was the one who survived. The one who packed the bags. Made the list. Lit the match. She got me here. And while she may be buried, I carry her name like armor. Liam never came back. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe he finally learned to stay gone. Maybe karma finished the job I started. I don't care. He's not part of this story anymore. He's just the prologue. A name you forget by the time the good part begins. We bought a house. With creaky floors and wildflowers in the backyard. It's nothing like the apartment. There are no ghosts here. Just space. For laughter. For softness. For the kind of quiet that doesn't mean danger. The kind that means peace. And now I wake up every morning and look in the mirror. I see the same eyes. Same bones. But they hold different things now. Clarity. Strength. Kindness. Not as performance but as choice. I see a woman who was once wrecked by a man who didn't know her worth. Who burned down her own life to escape him. Who rebuilt everything from the ground up. And who no longer owes anyone anything. Not an apology, not an explanation, not a second chance. That's the ending. Not wrapped in a bow. Not erased or rewritten. Just real. Just mine. A story not about revenge. But about resurrection. Think.